Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Tackle Change, Enthusiasm Required, presentation by Steve Wright. I'm your moderator, Doug Coon, and have worked with Steve for over 2 decades, and sure you will love his presentation. Before I introduce Steve, I want to cover some housekeeping. If you should experience some technical difficulties, let me know in the chat window, and I'll try to refresh your screen, or I may ask you to disconnect and try reconnecting. At the end of the presentation, we'll be having a drawing for a winner for the $100 Amazon gift card, just like Steve spoke about earlier, so stick around. Lastly, I want to thank our prize sponsors again. Without them, we wouldn't have these prizes. Huge thanks to Lenovo, Axiom, Intel, Cinex, Great American Financing, SonicWall, HP, and finally our friends over at Nex-Tech Wireless for helping sponsor Tech Edge. Now to introduce Steve Wright, our speaker. Steve has been a featured speaker for companies such as Intel, Microsoft, SonicWall, for his unique ability to bring life to integration between business and technology. Steve leads 2 Kansas technology peer groups and 2 national technology peer groups. An entertaining and motivating speaker, Steve speaks and facilitates seminars on technology business growth and culture. Steve, it's all yours.
Hey, thanks, Doug, and welcome to my office. Presenting from a different platform this year, but hey, I wanted to talk a little bit about my love for music, and it started in the 80s, arguably one of the best music times of ever, but it started with the album, right? This thing, and by album, I mean literally the LP, and if you don't even know what these are, it's possible because some folks have never seen a record anymore. And really, this is where the love of music started. But if you think about it, you had to take it and you had to put that needle on the record to listen to music. It had such a warm feel. But then we were introduced to kind of the first streaming music service. I'm taking you guys back a long ways. If you don't remember, like the Columbia Record Club. This is the thing that used to be in the paper on Sunday. And what you would do is have that little postcard, tape your penny on there, and you would select maybe 10 records that would come in the mail in, well, probably a month. And then you had to get 6 more at regular prices over the period of time. If you think about it, it was the Netflix of LPs of the day. And of course, that's the progression to that point. But then it moved on further than that. The cassette. This changed the world at one time because before this, you could only have one album and only be able to listen to certain songs or whatnot. But now you can have the cassette and record your own music. And so it was really an amazing experience from a standpoint that you could make a mixtape, record directly off the radio, and just get it right there. So that changed the world as it was. So there went the cassette. But then we moved on to the CD, right? Where you had digital music, flawless performance, unbelievably sound. And of course, then it progressed into the recordable CD so that you could make your own mixtape on CD, digital quality. But then things went rogue, right? That went into the whole world of Napster, LimeWire, people starting to download their own music, and of course, illegally because they weren't paying for it. And the industry fought the change. And so as that industry fought the change, some of my favorite bands like AC/DC and whatnot said they are going to fight and they're not going to make their music available digitally. But that's when Apple and the iPod and Steve Jobs stepped in and introduced the whole iPod and iTunes store where you could buy just a song for 99 cents. A revolutionary idea that changed music forever. And of course, now, if you think about it, it's really all went from a streaming standpoint. Everything's moved to the cloud. So if you think about that even further, I probably pay more for music than I ever have at any point in time in my life. I have my iTunes subscription for the family. Then you have the Sirius XM in my car. All of that I'm paying for annually or monthly. And of course, Pandora with paid ads, YouTube with paid ads, streaming music through your TV, all of this and more. And the industry changed dramatically. But if you really think about it, is it any better or worse, or is it just change? So what we want to talk about is embracing that change and doing something called curve jumping. So I have a pretty simple diagram, but if you think about that technology and the way business works, is everything kind of has an upslant as it's coming into its own. So as the digital music came into its own, it came up into here, and then then it slowly started going back down because people started jumping to the now streaming music. They didn't want to have to pay for it and get a limited amount of music. They wanted the unlimited amount of music. And so making sure that we recognize the trends in change to be able to get to that change quicker, change our businesses and get more productive faster and be ahead of that curve is so important. And that's where the genius lies. And so predicting the near future is not really that hard. There's a lot of folks out there, futurists, one of my favorite, Daniel Burrus, that follows those trends and can help you see what the future is going to bring. But to see change, we have to create momentum to have change, right? And change equals disruption, and disruption is change. So I just want to use those interchangeably, but I also want you to use these words interchangeably with innovation, because to have innovation, you must have change. And really, this is an excuse for us to do things differently and a chance to promote and develop people. And let's dive into that. But if you think about it, one of the struggles that I realized I had was all organizations are perfectly set up to produce the results that they're producing right now. That makes sense if you think about it backwards. But if you don't like the results that you're getting today, we have to change the organization. It has to change or it has to die, right? That's just the way things work. And if you think that people don't like change, because we hear that a lot, people are change avoidant, those kind of things, I'm going to challenge you differently. I'm going to suggest that people actually enjoy and embrace change. Let me give you an example. Self-transformation is empowering and inspiring. Specifically, it creates a lot of excitement. Let me give you the specifics on that. The self-help industry is an $11 billion industry every year. That's people going out to change their lives by themselves. And they're paying $11 billion in the US alone to do that. Not only that, it's changing and increasing by 5% a year. In fact, in the US alone, there's 18,000 life coaches. Those are people paying other people to help them change. So I think people fundamentally do want to change. In fact, if you want to see change, go to Facebook, and I promise you, you're going to see them posting about the new things that they're doing, the travels that they're doing, the new weight loss program or workout program they're getting into. You can see it all the time. But do you see them post about their organizational change in a positive way? Of course not. And I think the perspective matters a lot. Specifically, if you take a look at this image, I hope that you can see the image of a princess. But if I change your perspective on that, I'm guessing that it looks a bit different, right? And I think that's what we've done with change in an organization. In fact, the research says that between 70 and 80% of all change within an organization fails. That means that only 20 or 30% of change in an organization actually succeeds. That seems crazy. But let's dive into why. Well, most change works because some manager, director, owner, something like that, makes an announcement to start the change. What does that look like? To me, it looks like a Newton's Cradle. Yeah, if you're with me, I had no idea what a Newton's Cradle was. But y'all know what one is, right? This whole thing. That's where you pull the one ball back and then it pounds the other balls back out the other way. It keeps doing it with a little bit of momentum. That's the Newton's Cradle. So some manager comes in there and pounds the people on one side, and then they start swinging in a different way. And then they try to correct the behavior. But specifically, what does that look like? It looks like layoffs, and you can run, but you can't hide from organizational change. And I don't know about you. That's not very inspiring. That's not very fun. In fact, it's not a lot of fun at all. So leaders typically wait too long to act, and then it becomes a crisis mode. It's exhausting to be in a crisis mode, right? In fact, and then typically organizations are more like boiling a frog. If you're not familiar with the example, that is that if you have a pot of water, cold water on the stove, and you put a frog in it, he'll just sit in there, and as you turn the heat up and it gets to boiling, he will literally boil to death. But if you take him and drop him in boiling water, he'll jump right out. So organizations wait till it's already boiling, to change, but of course it's been a slow change and most of the people haven't realized it. Or the other thing that it might be like is my hair over the last 3 months. You know, I haven't had a chance to get the haircuts. Obviously I have now, but you don't realize how much hair I actually had until I got my first haircut after this thing, and I saw all the hair on the ground and how much cooler it actually was. It was a slow change over time, but then all of a sudden it seemed like I had a crazy amount of hair. So that's kind of how we look like in the organizations. The organizations focus on short-term results because of the emergency, and then we try to change our organizations through what? Meetings and emails. That's pretty inspiring, isn't it? The things that we put in place to create change are the very things that get rid of change, right? They hinder it. We create meetings, reports, policies, and task forces to enable change if they are the very thing that hinder it. Those things can be important, but they're not the most important thing. They, in fact, become the only things that we do. We make an excuse because we make it so complex and mundane that it's difficult to actually get anything done. Sound familiar? I know it does to me sometimes. So the more you try to manage change, the more it comes to a halt, if you make sense on that. And that is managing, not leading the organization. In fact, we are training professional skeptics in management now. They are going to tell us what's wrong, not what's going right. It's great to question things, but we cannot be the only things we do. In fact, the more you try to manage change, the more it comes to the halt. I know I've said it, but that's so important to tune into. Then we have this on-stage behavior that we enable the change through with an organization. We have some manager with HR and a consultant on some stage to tell everybody that we have to change. Not very motivating. But the real change happens after that, when the people get together around the water cooler and whatnot and discuss the meaningful ways the organization can be changed with their teams. And these are the clouds of influence that will actually create the meaningful change of an organization. But I want to continue, and I'm going to give you the answers of how we can fundamentally make change easier and more fun, but I want to make sure we cover all the other areas that we seem to hinder change. Let's talk about how we take process over culture. We take culture and we treat it in some kind of BS kind of ways. We put it on our walls. We have beanbag chairs in the office. We have meetings and talk about culture, and we've processed culture. In fact, we've structured it to the point that we just avoid the uncomfortable things that are soft that really need to be talked about in the organization. Those gray areas are the areas that make culture so important. Then we fundamentally put doing things over thinking. Well, that's crazy. In fact, I think we're addicted to doing that. Thinking has become a daring act in the business world, is my challenge. And taking it a bit further is, if you walked into somebody's office and you see them out looking out the window and you ask them what they're doing and they say, well, I was just thinking, I'm guessing your first reaction to that would be, get back to work. I sure wish I had that kind of time to do that. Wait, that's exactly what we want to do, isn't it? The brain's an amazing organ. It starts working the second we wake up and quits working the second we get into the office. That's where we need to turn our brains on and start doing our best thinking. And we only laugh because it's true. And last here, we create rules. And I have a great story about creating rules and how we kind of work on rules that we don't even know how they got there. And the story is a pretty simple story that came out of a theory in the 60s from Stevenson that was around monkeys. And I know I'm not necessarily talking about monkeys, but here it is. They had 10 monkeys in a cage with a ladder in the middle. And what they would do is they would put a banana on the top of the cage. And one monkey would climb the ladder and he would get the banana, and then he would get the reward of eating the banana. However, the other 9 monkeys would get squirted with cold water. In other words, getting punished. So day 2, they go through this, and the same behavior happens. One monkey climbs the ladder, the other 9 monkeys but get punished. So by day 3, what happened was when the monkey went to go climb the ladder, the other 9 monkeys beat that monkey and wouldn't allow him to go up the ladder to get the banana. The study goes a bit further. So they took this, and now we know that they're not going to climb the ladder. And week 1, they took one of the existing monkeys out and brought in a new monkey. And he hadn't witnessed any of the things that happened. So they put the banana on the top of the cage. The new monkey went to go climb the ladder. Of course, what happened? The other 9 beat that monkey, and he wouldn't go up there anymore. So over the period of the next 9 weeks, they replaced 1 monkey each week. And by the end of 10 weeks, they now have 10 net new monkeys that have never seen the punishment. They've never seen what happens. But guess what? Now none of them will go up the ladder to get the banana, and they don't even know why. And those are an example of some of the rules that we tend to put in place that we can't even explain why anymore. And if you think over the history, that's how sometimes your company gets that way. In fact, what that looks like is that's just the way we've always done it, right? If you've heard that, that's exactly the phrase where it comes from. I use another example of WestJet, a good Canadian jet company known for their culture, and their agents do not have any rules except for safety. Obviously, can't violate safety, but they only have guidelines of how to encourage their customers and treat their customers for the best customer experience. So maybe guidelines versus rules. So here's what I want to leave you with. I want to give you the 5 steps to enable change and innovation. Number 1 is pretty simple. You must embrace change. It's easier to look for excuses to create change than it is to avoid change. So be simple, embrace change, be a leader, and look for opportunities to jump the curve and get to where you want to be. 2, inspire through purpose. A lot of companies, when they embrace change, do it through financial goals. That's not particularly motivating to know how the company is going to do financially better, other than you get to keep your job. I want to give you a deeper sense of purpose in that, and I give you a very specific example through Lego. You might see over here on my shelves, my boys over the years have built me some Legos. Huge fan of the Lego company. And the specific example that I have with Lego is their investments in innovation is not towards new products. Obviously, they create new products very frequently. Here's how they state it: enabling more children to experience the joy of learning through play. It fundamentally feels different. And I would challenge you to find that so that you can innovate in a more inspiring way. Second example that I have is Syed Nadella from Microsoft. If you think about him, he took over from the greats of Microsoft, the Bill Gates, Steve Ballmer. That's who he had got to take over from. And an example that he chose was he shifted from silos within Microsoft to people-first culture. The specific example I want to share with you is, you may be familiar, I know I have a technical crowd, relevant to the old Microsoft Office, right? That's Word, Excel, PowerPoint. They all worked well, but they didn't really talk to each other. It didn't even work that well with Windows, for that matter. And then they shifted it to Microsoft 365 with integrations like Teams and being able to share and collaborate on the same systems and have video and integrations into all those systems. That's the fundamental shift that you saw as a company. Syed made that happen. I would highly recommend his book, Hit Refresh, The Quest to Rediscover Microsoft's Soul and Imagine a Better Future for Everyone. I've got it sitting over here on the shelf. Feel free to ask me up to borrow it. But a great example of how a leader can take it and make it from a product thing to a people first thing. Number 3, better meetings through better questions. You have to ask provocative and killer questions instead of content. We get mad when people waste our money, but we really don't get mad when they waste our time. Isn't that silly? Because time is money. If you want a better answer, we have to ask better questions. In the future, the right questions will likely become more valuable when finding the answers. Lisa Bodell had a great TED Talk on how simplification is the key to change. where some of this comes from. But specifically, Google's not a search engine. All right, I kind of know it is. But really, it's an answer engine, right? It provides you the answers. If we have better questions, then we can get better answers. And I want to give you some questions that I would recommend. If we had to give away our current products or services for free, how else could we make money? That would be a great example. What question would you love to ask our customers or employees but are scared or embarrassed to ask? Would be another question. And then the final question that I have here is, if you've written a tell-all book about our organization, what secrets does it reveal? I think those would be key. And if you went into your meetings asking those kind of questions, wouldn't you get better answers about how to innovate and how to curve jump? I would think so. Let's go to number 4, simplification. Ask people about 2 rules they could kill to increase innovation. I think what you'll find is most rules or policies were actually just meetings and emails that people took to be rules, and they would go away. And it looks like, who told you that was even a rule? It probably wasn't. I think that you also have to make simplification a habit. I think as human beings, we try to make things complicated on purpose. I think it's built into us. I think the key is, how can you make it simple? One of the things I would recommend is maybe you could go out to Amazon and buy a bunch of these meeting ribbons, and you could award it to people that maybe have meetings that are a waste of time. This one specifically says, I survived another email that should have, it survived another meeting that should have been an email, right? Because we've all been in those where it could have been so much more effective, not waste our time. So I would challenge you, maybe you can buy some of those ribbons. They're very cheap on Amazon, and have them sitting around, because you probably don't want to be awarded one of those ribbons. The other thing is, I think we treat simplification as an event. We discover something so complicated, and then we just make it simple once. We only do it once a year. We have to do it on an ongoing basis. We have to make this an operating principle of who we are. In fact, we need to empower people to get a task done with the minimum amount of resources required. I think today we do it the opposite. How much resources do you need so we can get it done? Not what's the minimum that you can get it done and still have a quality experience. Number 5, yeah, it's that simple, but we have to show results. We have to tell people when they're engaged in change that they can see the progress that the change is providing. Let me give you a very specific example. Imagine if you were running a race on the oval, or just running around the oval, and there was no finish line and no markers of progress. Eventually, you'll just slow down, won't you? But that's why we have to give our teams markers to say, hey, we're doing 4 laps. You're on lap 1. You're on lap 2. You're on lap 3. Man, final stretch. Let's go. Finish line. Instead, we just feel like we're running in the oval and not getting anywhere. Hey, I hope this has been helpful. Change is happening in your organization, whether you like it or not. We can either let the temperature slowly rise until you boil and are forced to change, or you can embrace the music and change how you want to do. I'm going to turn this back over to Doug to give away some money and see if we have any questions.
Thank you, Steve. Sorry, make sure I get caught up here. And thank you, everybody, for joining the webinar. I can assure you Steve practices what he preached today on a daily basis. As the Director of Sales here at Nex-Tech, he is a true leader, not a boss. At the end of this session, you should get dumped back into the lobby where you can choose from one of the next 2 presentations. You've got The New Kids on the Block by Lauren Von Lintel. It will be a very technical dive. Or Keep Calm and Get Your Teams On by Amanda Broletter and Chris Fair. So with that, I've got a drawing to do here. And let me grab a winner here. Rolling. The winner of the Amazon gift card is JCS. JCS. We will email you a link to your client to claim your prize. It'll be the $100 Amazon gift card you can go out and get. Any questions? We do have a few minutes here. If anybody has any questions, I can pose those to Steve.
Well, I definitely appreciate all the positive feedback I see on the chat over here, and thanks so much for the encouragement.
Wow, things are flooding in here. I hope I can grab all these. JC, if you can give us your full name. I see JC responded. Woohoo, thank you. If I don't have any questions, I'm looking. I don't see any. JC, I believe we can also grab your email because all I have is a first name and initial, but we should be able to get it off the form here. So with that, I think you guys have an extra 5 minutes in the lobby. Choose your next sessions. Steve, unless you have anything else, we're going to end the session.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.